All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is Wednesday, and you know what that means. Time to dive deeper into the Corpus Hermeticum, the Divine Pymander. Original manuscript, Hermes Trismegistus, 3rd century AD. But simply put, the philosophy, the spiritual and mystical philosophy of Hermetics, ladies and gentlemen, teaching us about the nature of God, the nature of humanity and our spirits and our souls and creation of the world and ourselves and the nature of the elements and everything else as far as astrology and astronomy, and much, much more, ladies and gentlemen. This is credited to Hermes Trismegistus, which touches upon astronomy, science, nature, and a great deal of theological material presented in the form of a discourse. And it's very fascinating. It says, to anyone, a format which will be familiar to anyone also familiar with Plato's works, Republic, and some other philosophical works of antiquity. Through his discourses with several individuals, Hermes Trismegistus, thrice greatest Hermes, or the Egyptian sage god Thoth, attempts to draw upon the overarching philosophy of as above, so below. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are on part 2 this week of chapter 10, or book number 10 in the Corpus Hermeticum, entitled The Mind to Hermes. But to me, it is the mind of God, Pymander, talking to Hermes Trismegistus here. And he went through such things as what God is and the nature of God. He said, therefore, the Lord makes it plain to me in this point, for I will believe you only for the manifestation of these things. Then said the mind how the case stands, and went through God and all, God, eternity, the world, time, creation, and then how God made eternity, eternity made the world is time, and time made creation, or made it possible. And of God, as it were, the substance is the good, the fair, blessedness, the wisdom of eternity, the identity of self. I'm just going to go through this really fast, getting us back to where we are leaving off today, which is about number 47. But of eternity, the identity of self, of the world order, of time, the ability to change. So change seems to come out of time and is linked to that, and of creation, life, and death. But the operation of God is mind and soul. Of eternity, permanence and immortality, of the world, restitution and decay. So there's that dual nature that we have, the as above, so below, is the immortal and eternal version that has permanence, and then the mortal and, not so permanent version. And then of time, we get the qualities of increase and decrease. So this is also describing the nature of reality in the universe and how it works. It says, therefore, eternity is in God. The world is in eternity, time is in the world, and creation is in time. So it kind of doubles up on that fact to make it seem more important. And eternity revolves around God. Found that fascinating. The world is moved in eternity. Time is determined in the world. Creation is done in time. Therefore, the spring and fountain of all things is Atum, the one God, or Tao, grand organized design, God, great spirit, whatever that be for you, ladies and gentlemen, that which we are a part of, that which contains everything and is the source for all creation. Substance from eternity, matter is from the world, and the power of God is eternity. Number 29 was, and the work of eternity is the world not yet made and yet continually made by eternity. That was a deeper one. Neither can anything perish or be destroyed in the world being contained and embraced by eternity. But what is the wisdom of God? even the good and the fair and the blessedness are a virtue and eternity. Eternity, therefore, put into the manner, immortality and permanence. For the generation that depends upon eternity, even as eternity does of God. See, this is where it got complicated, and it can be taken many different ways. However, for generation and time in heaven and in earth are of a double nature. In heaven, they are unchangeable and incorruptible, but on earth they are changeable and corruptible. So once again, there's that dual nature. And the soul of eternity is God, and the soul of the world is eternity. And the soul of the earth is heaven. God is in the mind, and the mind is in the soul. The soul is in matter, all things by eternity. All this universal body, it says, in which all bodies are contained, is full of soul. Soul is full of mind, and the mind is full of God. For within he fills them, and without he contains them, giving life to the universe. Without he gives life to this perfect living thing, the world. And within he creates all living things. And above in heaven he abides in identity, but below upon earth he changes creation. Eternity understands the world, either by necessity or providence or nature. And if any man shall think any other thing, it is God that operates this whole. Now, once again, we are reading from chapter 10, The Mind to Hermes, and we are attempting to catch up to where we left off last week. We're only a couple lines away, and then we will begin and we will continue and dive into the second half of this most fascinating chapter, The Mind to Hermes. It's 140 verses long, so hopefully we can finish it in this video here today, ladies and gentlemen. But let us continue from where we left off, though. So, eternity understands the world either by necessity, providence, or nature, and if any man shall think any other thing, it is God that operates this whole. But the operation of God is power unseparable, to which none may compare anything, either mundane or divine. Therefore, O Hermes, think none of these things below or the things above in any way is like unto God. For if you do, you may err from the truth. That one's fascinating there. Therefore, O Hermes, think none of these things below or of the things above in any way is like unto God. So it's a very deep one. He's saying, don't take these things that they are like unto God. Does he mean that they are not like God? Because God is more grand and much, that contains all of creation and also eternity. And so if you do, you err from the truth. Number 45, for nothing can be like the unlike. See, that answers our question there. And only, and one, nor ought you to think that he has given of his power to any other thing. For who after him can make anything, either of life or immortality, of change or quality? And himself, what other things should he make? 47, for God is not idle, for then all things would be idle, for all things are full of good. But there is not anywhere in the world such a thing as idleness, for idleness is a nature that implies a thing void or empty, both of a source of action and also action itself. So this is the most key point in pointing out that, it is the space within the picture that is the most useful, not the picture itself. And it is in that working together, because previously, we talked about this last couple weeks, Hermes asks, he goes, what of these things that are, you know, like an empty water pitcher? Is it not void? And you know, the mind of God, or it laughed and said, no, you have misunderstood. It said, isn't even the air that fills the water pitcher important and, you know, extremely necessary? Improper, and all things made of things that are, and not of things. The archetypal light. They're not moving. I'm trying to find it here. Oh, the grossness of your error. Here he goes. Asclepius is talking to Hermes. Asclepius asked, he said, are there not therefore some things that are empty, O Trismegistus, as an empty barrel or an empty pitcher? And Trismegistus says, oh, the grossness of your error, O Asclepius. Those things that are most full and replenished, do you say they are void and empty? So something that can be full and can be filled, once again, the space. What do you mean, Trismegistus? He says. Trismegistus responds, is the air. Is not the air a body? It is a body. Why then, this body, does it not pass through all things that are? And passing through them, fill them. And that body does it not consist of the mixture of the four elements, maybe? Therefore, all those things which you called empty are full of air. Therefore, those things you called empty, rather they are hollow, not empty, for they exist and are full of air, and thus spirit. Of the mind, call it, he goes, so what do we call this place? What shall we call this place in which the whole universe is moved? Call it incorporeal, O Asclepius. Incorporeal. Now that brings us back to number 48. But there is not anywhere in the world such a thing as idleness, for idleness is a name that implies a thing void or empty. And as we just learned, the air as a body also fills all things with spirit, leaving them not void. 48, but there is not anywhere in the world such a thing as idleness, for idleness is a name that implies a thing void or empty, both a source of action and also action itself. 49, but all things must necessarily be made or done both always and according to the nature of every place. 50, for he that makes or does is in all things, and yet not fastened or comprehended in anything, nor making or doing one thing, but all things. So God, the nature of God, is not fastened down and cannot be comprehended in any one thing, nor making or doing one thing, but all things. 51, for being an active or operating power and sufficient of himself for the things that are made and the things that are under him. 52, look upon, through me, the world is subject to your sight, and understand exactly the beauty thereof. Now this is starting with a little bit beyond where we left off last time. I think last time we left up on that void and empty nature. And now, continuing, it seems, with a description of God, or Atum. Let's continue, ladies and gentlemen, and see what we can learn. Thank you for being here. I love and appreciate each and every one of you who joins me here in these videos, as well as in the premieres and the live chats. It's always fun to go back and forth with you. I may be busy today. We'll see if I can interact in the live chat, though. But it's always fun to see what you guys come up with, because last week it was just such a wonderful chat. There was so many ideas and just a lot of stuff going, you know, way over my head. I'm learning from you guys down there, so keep it up. because it is a good collaboration, and this is how we can continue the advancement of our understanding of this grand and great wisdom, lost wisdom of the ages and the pharaohs. Let us continue, ladies and gentlemen. 52. Look upon me through me. The world is subject to your sight, and understand exactly the beauty thereof. A body perpetual, for which is nothing more ancient, yet always vigorous and young. See also the 7 worlds set over us, adorned with an everlasting order and filling eternity with a different course. Wow. For all things are full of light, but the fire is nowhere. For the friendship and opposition of dichotomies and unlike become light, shining from the operation of God, the Father of all good, the Prince of all order, and the ruler of the 7 worlds. Wow, ladies and gentlemen. I'm hoping and I'm guessing he's going to tell me and tell us about these 7 worlds, because this, in all of the entire Hermetica, unless I'm forgetting, and so far in this first half of the Corpus Hermeticum, I don't believe I've learned about the 7 worlds. Maybe spoken about differently, rather than calling them worlds. But then he also mentions that the fire is nowhere. What do you think the mind of God means by that? See also the 7 worlds set over us. Is that the planetary deities? The gods? This is fascinating. This is fascinating. What do we have? I'm thinking of the planets, and that might be where we're going with this. However, for the friendship and the opposition of the dichotomies and unlike become light, shining from the operation of God, the Father of all good, the Prince of all order, and the ruler of the 7 worlds. Look also upon the moon, the forerunner of them all, the instrument of nature, and which changes the matter here below. So is this describing astrology now? And how the astrological affects our matter in this physical realm down here? Behold, this is number 58. Behold the earth, the middle of the whole, the firm and stable foundation of the fair world, the feeder and nurse of earthly things. Number 59, consider moreover how great the multitude is of immortal living things, and of mortal ones also, and see the moon going about in the midst of both, to wit, of things immortal and mortal. Number 60, but all things are full of soul, and all things are properly moved by it. Some things about the heaven, and some things about the earth, and neither of those on the right hand to the left. What? This one is getting very deep here, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes I can glean more ramblings from this of what I may think it means, but this one is very deep. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Nor those on the left hand to the right, and neither of those on the right hand to the left. So in other words, it's saying the things are in their place and are not out of place. So the things that are on the right hand will not be on the left. And, everything has its place. Nor those things that are above downward, and nor those things that are down or that are below upwards. 61. And that all these things are made, O beloved Hermes, you need not learn of me. So it seems like he tells him again, all of these things that I have just described, do not worry about it, despite it being the nature of reality, which is fascinating. And that all these things are made, O beloved Hermes, you need not learn of me, for they are bodies and have a soul and are moved, and that all these things come together into one. It is impossible without something to gather them together. Therefore, there must be some such ones, and he altogether one, God. Profound, ladies and gentlemen, very profound. 65. For seeing that the motions are differentiated and plural, and the bodies are not alike, and yet one ordered swiftness among them all, it is impossible there should be two or more makers. For one order is not kept by many, but in the weaker there would be jealousy of the stronger, and thence also contentions. That is very true of humanity anyways. It's funny that God would say this of himself and another, if there were another maker. But getting to the point, multiple times here in this reading, the reason why there is one grand organized design through creation or the universe or Atum, the one God, or just God. That seems to be what all of humanity for some reason through a vast majority agrees upon, is that there is this thing that we don't really know what it is, but we're all trying to describe it in many different ways, and a lot of us just agree that it is God, but there's many different names for it, and that is not the important part. It is the spiritual philosophy and understanding rather than the religionism and worshiping the religion. We're just too distracted for the last few thousand years. But who knows? Because our history has been lost. However, the seven worlds was fascinating. Mercury, Earth, Venus, Mars. I don't know. This is just thinking of the planets there and trying to make sense of the seven worlds, and then the sun and the moon. Look also upon the moon, the forerunner of those things. Consider, moreover, it's fascinating. See, I wanted to get to the point to where he talked about this right here, for all things are full of light, but the fire is nowhere. Now that's very deep. So how then, this is what I thought of when it says the next line, how then is light created? Through a complex pattern, which is like described in the next line, for the friendship and opposition of dichotomies, a dichotomy being a separation, or, much like an opposition there, two separate things, but a friendship of the opposition of these dichotomies, and unlike, become light shining from the operation of God. So I'm sure if you broke down the mathematical, formula, or gave a graph diagram of the understanding of how light is created, and then, the light spectrum and all of that through refractions and much, I think this is more of a esoteric description of that. For the friendship and opposition of dichotomies and unlike become light shining from the operation of God. That is super powerful. And I was reminded of that when it said, foreseeing that the motions are differentiated and plural, and the bodies not alike, and yet one ordered swiftness among them all. For one order is not kept by many, but in the weaker there would be jealousy of the stronger. And thence also contentions, ladies and gentlemen. And if there were one maker of mutable mortal living wights, WIGHTS, interesting, he would desire also to make immortal ones, as he that were the maker of the immortal ones would do to make mortal. So to me, that means there would be both, would not make just one. Number 69, moreover, also, if there were two, the matter of being one, who should be a chief or have power over the course of events. 70, or if both of them, which of them the greater part? So once again, going back to the left hand and the right hand and the left, the below and the above and the above and the below, everything has its place. Talking about the order here. Immortal ones. Or if both of them, which of them the greater part? But I think thus that every living body has its consonance of matter and soul, and of that which is immortal, and that which is mortal and unreasonable. Remember, the reasonable was the immortal. That line there describes our dual nature. But I think that thus every living body has its consonance of matter and of soul. Soul being that part of us, ladies and gentlemen, which is immortal and divine, and that will live on past this temporary human experience that we are having as a spiritual being, rather than the other way around. Us being human beings who every now and then just have a temporary spiritual experience. This is much more the case, that every living body has its consonance of both matter and of soul, and of that which is immortal, and also that which is mortal and unreasonable. For all living bodies have a soul, and those things that are not living are only matter by itself. So the soul is life. The spirit, we learned previously, was that animating energetic essence that gives energy, I believe, to the life that is contained within the body. The spirit, I believe, contained within the mind. But this can be debated easily and widely by many esoteric philosophers and occult mystics, and whatever you want to call it, just researchers of the spiritual philosophy and wisdom of the ages, and Hermetics, ladies and gentlemen, which is what I consider it. I hope you're getting value if you are here. Thank you so much for joining me and Hermes Trismegistus to learn from the mind of God in the Corpus Hermeticum. So I'll read 73 there again. And the soul likewise of itself drawing near her maker is the cause of life and being the cause of life is, after a manner, the cause of immortal beings. Wow. 72 again. For all living bodies have a soul, and those things that are not living are only matter by itself. 73. And the soul likewise of itself, drawing near her maker, is the cause of life and being. And the being, the cause of life, is, after a manner, the cause of immortal things. That one's deep. The soul, self drawing near her maker, the soul is the cause of life and being. And being, the cause of life, is the cause of immortal things. Interesting. That made me think of tulpas for some reason, how thought forms, if given this sort of reality or this beingness from nothing can become something because of the beingness. And being is the cause of life. And being the cause of life is the cause of immortal things. So those things that live, see, just like the things that don't live, a thought form, can become something that does, possibly, I don't know, this is just a metaphor to try to understand what is being said here, even if it's not correct, the processes. So a thought form becoming something tangible or being, and then something that is real and that does have life and being, eventually causing immortal things of similar nature, like us having soul, which is our immortal part, and the body, the mortal part. But this life in the body with the soul giving us the future cause of immortal existence. Very fascinating, ladies and gentlemen. Let me continue. 74. How then are mortal spirits different from the immortal? Or how can he make living spirits that cause immortal things and immortality? Trismegistus asks, the mind of God. Once again, we're reading this for purposes of teaching and commentary and expanding the mind so that we, through a greater awareness and understanding of the nature of reality, can increase the quality of our lives and the lives of those around us. And also, once again, this is the Corpus Hermeticum, the Divine Pymander, original manuscript, Hermes Trismegistus, 3rd century AD, new edition edited by Tarl Warwick. But it's from 2015, so I wonder if there's newer editions, but I often also wonder if as the editions get newer and newer, the translations get rougher and rougher. But nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, there is so much that we can glean from this, and let us continue. How then are mortal spirits different from the immortal, and how cannot he make living spirits that cause immortal things and immortality? 76. That there is somebody that does these things, it is apparent. That he is also one, it is most manifest. 77. For there is one soul, one life, and one matter. Who is this? Who can it be other than the one God? 79. For who else can it benefit to make living things, save only God alone? 80. There is therefore one God, for it is a ridiculous thing to confess the world to be one sun, one moon, one divinity, and yet to have not how many gods? I know not how many gods. I'll read that again. For it is ridiculous thing to confess the world to be one sun, one moon, one divinity, and yet to have I know not how many gods. So he's saying you can't, if you know that there is one of this and one of that and one divinity, how could you be so silly to not know that there is one God? Maybe this is being spoken about because a lot are really into a lot of gods and not giving credit and reverence to the one God that is responsible for all other forms of divinity, contained within eternity, which is contained within God, or the mind of God, which the world is contained within that. But that was back in the beginning. So, for it is a ridiculous thing to confess to the world to be one sun, one moon, one divinity, and yet to have not know many gods, not know how many gods there are. It's like, he therefore being one, does all things in many things. And what great thing it is for God to make life and soul and immortality and change, and when you yourself do so many things. For you see and hear, smell, taste, and feel, move, understand, and breathe. And it is not one that sees, and another that hears, and another that speaks, and another that feels, and another that smells, and another one of you that walks, and another one that understands, and another one that breatheth, but one that does all these things. That makes me think of when when I've described God in the past and saying, it is what is beating our hearts and breathing our lungs. We're not consciously sitting here going, inhale, exhale, like a machine process. This is all just being done for us unconsciously by the nature of the creation and the energetic essence or force underlying the continuation of creation or reality. But a simpler way to put that would be like the future potential based on the circumstances given to whatever it is in reality. So the tomato seed has the future potential, I've talked about this a lot, of becoming a tomato plant. There is no tomatoes in the seed, however, if you give the right situations in the water and the soil and you have. And so therefore our bodies, given the right situations and circumstance, continue these processes ordered or ordained by Atum, the one, or the universe, or Tao, or Grand, or whatever you want to call it, God. And so, but one that does all these things. So it is not many that does all these things, but one. 86, yet neither can these things possibly be without God. 87, for as you, if thou should cease from doing these things, were not a living spirit. So if God should cease from those, he would not any longer be God. For if it be already demonstrated that nothing can be idle or empty, how much more may be affirmed of God? See, that's why I felt it important to go back to the idle and empty thing earlier. For if it has already been demonstrated to you that nothing can be idle or empty, then how much more may be affirmed of God? 89, for if there be anything which he does not do, then he would be imperfect. That is how it worded it there. It's very fascinating. I'm wondering sometimes if the translations in these, ladies and gentlemen, are a little bit different than what it could be, because as you know, as you bring some languages over to English, the certain words like is kind of get out of place. But that one said, for if there be anything which he does not do, then he would be imperfect. But in other words, the Tao does nothing and leaves nothing undone. And there is nothing that the Tao does not do, because then it would be undone. I liked that comparison there to that line in the line of the Tao Te Ching. Very good one. Number 90, whereas seeing he is not idle, but perfect, certainly he does all things. Now, 91, give yourself unto me, O Hermes, for a little while. You will thus more easily understand that it is the necessary work of God, that all things should be made or done that are done, or once were done, or shall be done. 92, and this, O best beloved, is life, and this is the fair, and this is the good, and this is God. 96. And if you will understand this by work also, mark what happens to yourself when you procreate. Very fascinating. 97. And yet this is not like unto God, for he is not sensible of pleasure, for neither does he have any other fellow workman. But being himself the only workman, he is always in the work, himself being that which he creates. So far, the nature of God and the nature of reality as compared to man and nature, possibly. It's a different way to think of this. But being himself the only workman, as compared to us, when we procreate, there is two required. But for God, that is only one. He is always in the work, himself being that which he creates. So in other words, we are God, ladies and gentlemen. You are God. So is the plants and the trees and the tables and chairs, including the mineral kingdom. It's my favorite joke. We need to give the mineral kingdom more credit because it's always getting stepped on, ladies and gentlemen. The mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, our kingdom, and the kingdom of divinity. However, for all things, if they were separate from him, must inevitably fall and die, as there being no life in them. 100. And again, if all things be living spirits, both which are in heaven and upon earth, and that there be one life in all things which are made by God, and that is God, then certainly all things are made or done by God. Life is in the union of the mind and the soul. 102. But death is not the destruction of those things that were gathered together, but a dissolving of the union. Very fascinating. 103. The image, therefore, of God is eternity, of eternity, the world, of the world, the Son, of the Son, S-U-N, man. The image of God is eternity. The image of eternity is the world, and the image of the world is the Son, which is very different. How is the image of the world the Son? However, and the of the Son, man. So the image of the Son is man. Very fascinating. 104, but the people say that changing is death, because the body is dissolved and the life goes into that which is intangible. By this discourse, my dearest Hermes, I affirm, as you hear, that the world is changed, because every day part thereof becomes invisible, but that it is never dissolved. Part of the world, he says, every day becomes invisible, but it is not dissolved. What does he mean? And these are the passions of the world. Revolutions and occultation. A revolution is a turning, but an occultation is a renovation, a changing. 107. And the world, being all formed, does not have forms lying without it, but itself changes in itself. Seeing then the world is all formed, what must he be that made it? For without form he cannot be. 109. And if he be all formed, he will be kept like the world. But if he have but one form, he shall be in this regardless of the world. 110. Why do we then say that he is, We will not raise any doubts by our speech, for nothing that is doubtful concerning God is yet known. 111. He has therefore one idea, which is proper to him, which, because it is intangible, remember the tangible and the intangible, the material and the spiritual, it is not subject to the sight, and yet shows all forms by the bodies. Wow. Wow. That's a beautiful way of describing God there, and that it is everything, but it is also one thing at once, and that it is not material, but it is also immaterial or intangible. He has therefore one idea which is proper to him, which, because it is intangible, it is not subject to the sight, and yet shows all forms by bodies, whether it be the body of a tree, the body of a plant, or of an ant, or of a house, or of yourself, ladies and gentlemen. Number 112 in chapter 10 in the Corpus Hermeticum, or book number 10. I like to call them books and verses rather than chapters and lines, but either way, same thing. Number 112, and do not wonder if there be an incorruptible idea. 113, for they are like the possessions of speech, which is in writing. For they seem to be high and swelling, but they are by nature smooth and even. 114, but understands well this that I say, more boldly, for it is more true. As man cannot live without life, so neither can God live not doing good. For this is, as it were, the life and motion of God, to move all things, and to give life to them. 116, but some of the things I have said must have a particular explanation. Understand, then, what I say. 117, all things are in God, not as lying in a place, for place is both a body and unchanging. And those things that are placed have no motion, for they lie otherwise in that which is intangible than in the fantasy or to appearance. 119, consider him that contains all things, and understands that nothing is more capacious than that which is incorporeal, nothing more swift, nothing more powerful, but it is most capacious, most swift, and most strong. 120, and judge this for yourself. And judge this for yourself. Command your soul to go into India, and sooner than you command it, it will be there. That's very deep. Every time he says something like that, I'm like thinking he's talking about astral projection or traveling or, out-of-body experience. Bid it likewise pass over the ocean, and suddenly it will be there. Not as passing from place to place, but suddenly. It teleports. You don't fly there. You're just like, boom, hello, there's the ocean. Then you think of a forest, and you're like, boom, trees in the middle of a forest. Then you think of a desert. What's coming to your mind every time? All right, let's think of the middle of a city. Boom, we're there. Let's think of, we are in an Arctic tundra. You were probably already there before I said tundra. We are in underwater vessel. I mean, instantly your mind takes you to where this is amazing that he's describing this. I'm not sure why, though. Suddenly, he says, it will be there. Command it to fly into heaven, and it will not need any wings, neither shall it hinder it. Neither shall anything hinder it, not the fire of the sun nor the ether, not the turning of the spheres, not the bodies of any other stars, but cutting through all, it will fly up to the last and furthest body. 123, and even if you wish to break the whole, and if you even wish to break the whole, you see those things that are without the world. You are able to do so. So maybe he is talking about an astral projection experiment to see this and understand this teaching that is being given here. 124, behold, how great power and how great swiftness you have. Can you do all these things and God cannot? Question mark. 125, after this manner, therefore, contemplate God, to have all the whole world to himself, as it were, all thoughts or intellects. If therefore you don't not equal yourself to God, you cannot understand God. If you don't not equal yourself to God, so if you're not equaling yourself to God, then you're not going to understand God. For the like is intelligible by the like. 128, increase yourself into immeasurable greatness, leaping beyond every body and transcending all time, become eternity. And you then understand God. If you believe in yourself that nothing is impossible, but account yourself as immortal, and that you may understand all things, every art, every science, and the manner and custom of every living thing, become higher than all height, lower than all depths. Comprehend in yourself the qualities of all the creatures, of the fire, the water, the dry and moist, and conceive likewise that you can at once be everywhere, in the sea, in the earth. 130, then you will at once understand yourself, not yet begotten in the womb, young, old, to be dead, the things after death, and the things, all these together, and also times, places, deeds, qualities, quantities, or else you cannot yet understand God. Now, I've gone through this faster today to focus on the reading, and honestly, a lot of this is super deep, and this time it's going over me, ladies and gentlemen, but like we always will reference here, and I'll reference now, in the very first words of Hermes Trismegistus in the Hermetica, teaching us why we must continue to come back, even when it is over our heads. That is important. That means you are on the path of progress. But in that thought, with this being deep, and sometimes it is very, it's up to a personal interpretation. And then we can come together and create a better interpretation. However, Hermes says in the very first lines of the Hermetica, in the first chapter, the prophecies of Hermes, remember, pure philosophy is a spiritual striving through constant contemplation to attain true knowledge of Atum, the one God. So it is a constant contemplation, ladies and gentlemen, a constant meditation, constant rumination, a constant ponderation, a constant thinking about and thinking on, so that we may come to attain an understanding of the lost wisdom of the pharaohs and the wisdom of the ages, ladies and gentlemen. Understanding of the nature of reality and the nature of God in ourselves. Number 131, 10 left to 141. But if you shut up your soul in the body and abuse it and say, I understand nothing, I can do nothing, I am afraid of the sea, I cannot climb up to heaven, I know not who I am, and I cannot tell what I shall be. You can see that this is what the rulers want us to believe of ourselves. Those that be They want us to think this of ourselves and say, oh, we can't, we are not divine. We do not have this power of divinity within us. And we are not a part of God, but God is separate, and we must go on bended knee and pray for a savior, because problem, reaction, solution is, we got your problem, you are worthless. And so the only thing you can do is hope to be saved, and we have your solution. We have given you a problem, your reaction, and here is your solution. Ladies and gentlemen, you can see how they did that and destroyed Alexandria and all the great quote-unquote pagan cultures, or the grand, true, spiritual, and mystical traditions and philosophies that came together to understand, to compare. I'm becoming inspired here. It came together to compare side by side the works of Plato, Pythagoras, let me get there, Thoth, or thrice great Hermes, in the universal city. The early origins, although largely unknown today, the writings attributed to Hermes and Thoth have been immensely important to the history of the world. They profoundly influenced the Greeks, and through their rediscovery in the 15th century, in the Renaissance, in Florence, they helped inspire the Renaissance, or the Renaissance, which gave birth to our modern age. The list of people who have acknowledged a debt to the Hermetica, or Hermes Trismegistus, is all the greatest minds of our times. Leonardo, Botticelli, William Blake, Isaac, Sir Walton, so many. Daniel Defoe, Shelley and his wife Mary, Victor Hugo, Carl Jung, Shakespeare, John Donne, John Dee, poet, philosophers who surrounded the court of Queen Elizabeth, as well as the founding scientists of the Royal Society in London. Very fascinating, ladies and gentlemen. But the early origins of the Hermetica is shrouded in mystery, but the evidence suggests that it is a direct descendant of the ancient philosophy of the Egyptians, and I believe an ancient understanding that came from before them, from the Golden Age, Atlantis, so on and so forth. However, the handful of surviving works attributed to Hermes are not written in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, but in Greek, Latin, and Coptic. They were collected in the city of Alexandria during the 2nd and 3rd centuries. The Hermetic philosophy helped inspire some of the greatest intellectual achievements of the ancient world. This knowledge and wisdom that we are understanding and researching here today, the reason we are doing that is to increase the quality of our lives through this understanding and the lives of those around us, but also because this knowledge came to inspire the greatest times and the greatest minds and intellectual achievements of our history. Alexandria was a great center of learning, surpassing even Athens. Its founder, Alexander the Great, had conquered and united Greece, Persia, Egypt, and India into one vast empire. Cultures that had grown up more or less independently were brought together. And in this new universal city, poured men and women of every race and nation, Greeks, Jews, Egyptians, Babylonians, Phoenicians, and Buddhists from India, and many, many more, associated together in relative peace, and were able, side by side, to study and compare the ultimate knowledge: Pythagoreanism, Chaldean oracles, Greek myths, Platonic and Stoic philosophy, the Greek mystery schools, Zoroastrianism, astrology, alchemy, Buddhism, probably Taoism, in the course of the ancient, and of course, the ancient Egyptian spiritual philosophy. were all practiced and studied and compared and discussed side by side in mutual and relative peace. Can you imagine the spiritual understanding that we could get to at this point? The golden age of Alexandria came to an end with the birth of an intolerant Christian Holy Roman Empire. And despite the sophistication and cultural achievements of the ancients, the Christians referred to them dismissively as pagans, which simply means country dwellers. And unfortunately, those, unfortunately, they did this to us, and they took this knowledge away from us for a very long time. And they've taught us that instead of doing this, of becoming higher than all height and lower than all depths, and comprehending yourselves in the quality of all creatures, the fire, the water, the dry, the moist, and likewise that you can at once be anywhere and everywhere in the sea and the earth, and you will at once understand yourself and the things and all these together. But if you shut up your soul and a body and abuse it, which is what they caused us to do by losing this knowledge and destroying all the information and calling it pagan wisdom and burning all of the texts and destroying all the temples, much like the city of Alexandria, and dispersing this wisdom to the four winds, where it may be hidden until an older heaven births human beings who are worthy of this wisdom, rather than those that would wander the wastelands of life, as the words of Hermes says in another book. And we will be lost to abuse it and say, I understand nothing, I can do nothing, I am afraid of the sea, I cannot climb up to heaven, I know not who I am, I cannot tell where I shall be. What have you to do with God? For you may understand none of these fair and good things, and still be a lover of the body and evil. And that is exactly what the intolerant, Holy Roman Christian Empire wanted us to do. They wanted us to fall into that trap and become a lover of the body and the mortal and the quote-unquote evil, and forget about the divine and our connection to God and the knowledge of our soul and the Creator and of reality, ladies and gentlemen. 132, for it is the greatest evil not to know God. And that is what they did to us when they destroyed this knowledge and called it pagan and caused us to become, slaves to a fear and guilt control system, some would call a matrix. 133, let me continue. Quote, but to be able to know and to will and to hope is the straight way and divine way, proper to the good. And it will everywhere be with you and everywhere be seen of you, plain and easy, when you do not expect or look for it. It will meet you walking and sleeping, sailing and traveling by night or by day, when you speak and when you are silent. For there is nothing which is not the image of God. And yet you say God is invisible, but be advised, for who is more manifest than he? 136, for therefore he has made all things, and you by all things may see him. 137, this is the good of God. This is the virtue, to appear and to be seen in all things. There is nothing invisible, no, not of those that are incorporeal. 139, the mind is seen in understanding, and God is seen in doing or making. Let these things thus be made manifest unto you, O Trismegistus. And finally, the last line of this most profound and powerful 10th book or chapter of the Corpus Hermeticum, the Mind to Hermes. 141. Understand in like manner all other things by yourself, and you may not be deceived. I'll read those last 4 lines there again. There is nothing invisible, no, not of those things that are incorporeal. The mind is seen in understanding, and God is seen in doing or making. Let these things thus be made manifest unto you, O Trismegistus. Understand, in like manner, all other things by yourself, and you may not be deceived. And you may not be deceived, ladies and gentlemen. And that is a boon to the mind, to Hermes, and the wisdom and philosophy of the Corpus Hermeticum, and the knowledge and the understanding of the nature of reality and God, and how we play a role in that. That, ladies and gentlemen, was profound and powerful. And I think we'll leave it there. Sometimes I like to ramble a lot, but we had a lot to get through today, and I didn't want to distract us and get us off topic from the teaching, because we just went from verse 47 to 141. So almost 100 lines there, ladies and gentlemen. That was amazing. Next Wednesday, chapter 11 of the common mind, to Thoth. Thoth is the son of Thoth, or Trismegistus, which is very fascinating. So of the common mind, the mind, O Thoth, is the very essence of God, if yet there be any essence of God. And so we'll have some back and forth between father and son. Speaking of, once again, more and more. Wow, this is a long one too. 128 verses next time. So we're getting close, ladies and gentlemen, though. We only have a few more chapters. And we, like it says, the last chapter, and now Asclepius is truly wise. To Asclepius to be truly wise. So hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, we can remember to seek to achieve and maintain happiness through a greater awareness and a greater understanding of the nature of our reality, and through the mysteries of our history. And remember to seek to discover the lost wisdom of the ages and the wisdom of the pharaohs. And also, ladies and gentlemen, remember that there is no way to happiness or enlightenment, matter of fact, because it is the way. It is the activity and the process that we must bring to life. And when we can create that ability within ourselves to bring happiness and enlightenment to life in the moment, then all the things we've been telling ourselves, oh, when I get this understanding or have that much money or get this, I'll finally be enlightened or be happy, that becomes irrelevant, because then we already are there. And then the entire journey is wonderful. That's what we talked about in yesterday's video, that philosophy of bringing happiness to life, and all about what you need to know about happiness and negative thoughts and feelings, and how to defeat them and begin to create a practice and an unconscious habit and routine of experiencing much greater qualities of life. So if you missed that video and you're interested in that subject, be sure to check that out. But once again, I thank you so much for everybody who joins me here on these videos and joins me and Hermes Trismegistus and Thoth and all the wonderful authors and poets and mystics and sages of the ages, ladies and gentlemen, because give yourself a pat on the back. You are part of the few percentage that is growing and that is going to create the spiritual revolution that will lift the consciousness of humanity, of mankind. Be sure to expand the description. Get this book for yourself. There's a link below. Underneath the video, there'll be a little box. You can hit more that expands, and there's a link to the book to get it for yourself. So you can put it on your shelf to follow along in future episodes, and also to reference in your own spare time, as well as a link to my landscape paintings CLC Paint Etsy shop, and a link to C60 Purple Power, the most powerful antioxidant known to man. Give yourself the gift of health, ladies and gentlemen. And I'll leave it there. This was a wonderful one. And thank you so much. Once again, I always love and appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, be the change that you want to see. Be the example that you want to set.